lecturer. It doesn't have, I don't even need to introduce him. Everyone here knows who is Toninho. Professor Antônio Eduardo Clark Peres, or Toninho Peres, is a metallurgical engineer by UFMG. I will not say the dates, Toninho, and he has a post-graduation and doctorate by UMC. He is a researcher 1A from CNPq and has been the advisor for several master's and doctorate theses. He is the author of more than 400 papers, and it's an honor to have you here with us. We are having this wonderful conference in which we will have a lot of new things, right? But I will do something different. I will talk a little bit about how we got to where we are today. These are my advisors. George Pulling was my doctorate guidance teacher, and he was the other one. John Leah was the advisor of George Pulling. In 1986, Leah retired and has expressed that he wanted to come to Brazil to visit Brazil. So we decided to hold a workshop in the University of British Columbia, and we had the support of some companies from Araxá. It was held in the Great Hotel of Araxá with lecturers such as Leia, Poling, Ashwix, that was the first PhD in this group. I was the second, and Paulo Brandão was the next. In this workshop, we had as our guests collaborators, employees from companies, professors of the university. Laurindo, who is here today, he was a child, but he was participating there. And we had people from other companies as well that showed a lot of interest, particularly in a young engineer, Rogério Contato. And this led me to be invited for an in-company training in Arafércio in 1988. Things were a bit slow at that time. After that, we had the post-graduation program with the University of São Paulo and Phosphate companies in 93 and 94, again with classes in Araxá, coordinated by Professor Damasceno. After that, I started getting consultancies in Arafércio, Fosfércio, and finally they were acquired by Bunge, and missed the Bunge times. So this is a small chronology of what I did in my master's and my doctorate, and it directly or indirectly had to do with phosphate. First was Paulo Viana in 1991. He studied the dispersion and depression of dolomite. This problem is still here for all minerals, all ores that have dolomite. And the second influence here is Ruth Reis. She was able to unveil the application of cornstarch, unconventional cornstarch, such as grits and fubá, that replaced the starch from the corn refinery in Brazil at the time, that what we call maizena. And this broke the monopoly, the cruel monopoly of the refining of corn in Brazil. And the name here is for iron ore, but we also applied that for phosphates. Third, Laurindo was a great influence in my master's. He was an engineer in the city of Jacopiranga. At that time, we used to receive the recipes for the reagents, and Laurindo, as smart as he is, he decided to try to unveil those reagents. Why were we using cornstarch? Why not using guar gum as in other countries? So he wrote a dissertation that contributed a lot to the field. Next, I would like to mention Rosa Malena, who studied new collectors for phosphate flotation in the city of Tapira. The ore from Tapira was floated all at once. And then they discovered that it was better to create two circuits, and one of these circuits we used fatty acids with synthetic collectors. In this dissertation from Rosa opened a pathway for using sulfosuccinamate in industrial scale. Then we have Cláudio Luz Lopes Pinto that also tried to unveil starch. What is starch? It's amylose and amylopectin, and so he studied for different kinds of ores, including calcite and apatite, the effect of starch and its individual components. For the moment, the concerns were about the collectors, and people would forget how the same reagent that was a collector could also be a froth agent. So there was the need to study the effect of starch in the flotation froth. Igor wrote this paper that helped to solve a very, very serious problem that happened in the city of Tapira some years later, which was a crazy frothing that started happening in the concentrate in the thickener. It would have a 3 meter high froth, and it would go for several kilometers from until Uberaba, and is still frothing. So the environmental agencies wanted to close the operation. And then we, we a three guys from Anafertu and Maccioli, they started a work to investigate that. The work was connected to concentration and fragmentation, and Maccioli analyzed later on how the mineral component would affect the production of phosphoric acid for fertilizers. So within the production chain of fertilizers, he went through a phase that was very little studied. Later we have these two friends, Zé Ronaldo and João Batista.
That was a time when Brazil wanted to create reactors after the ones that didn't work out very well. And so Brazil had thorium, but we discovered that we only had uranium in the state of Ceará. And then the paper that they wrote, one was a sequence of the other, and they wanted CD2, CDM. It was a mineral research center, okay, and they were responsible for the entry of flotation in Brazil. So they assembled that. I brought the design of flotation in a column from Canada, and the column was assembled, but they didn't want to tell me how was the sparger, the aerator. And a curious thing, the first sparger in the first pilot column that we had in Brazil was the synthesized glass, and that was broken, and that they found it and they placed it on top of the column, okay? And so Hayes Jr. decided to start working in Araputanga, in the city of Araputanga, in the Manati Mining Company. And he implemented there the first industrial flotation columns. History says that the first industrial flotation columns started in San Marco, the company called San Marco, but in reality they started at the Manati Mining Company. That's the truth. And then We had the golden boys, the three golden boys from Arafértil. Okay? Rogério Guimarães, he studied the separation of barite, and then in the PhD course that he took, he studied flotation of the barite. And so they could only discuss the flotation of barite, okay, in his company. The papers went way beyond there, but the CEO said that they can only publish papers that were discussing barite, okay. In the interval between them, Rodrigo Albuquerque started working with barite in the CDTM, but his main concern was to test different depressors for barite. And the interesting thing was that they always considered that among the starch components, the amyloses was the least competent. Okay, and if we are discussing the flotation circuit, the first thing that you have to do, you have to adjust the grinding and regrinding circuit. Okay, and this was done by Mr. Cláudio Fernandes from the company called Arafértil. Mr. Fernandes is giving me a smile because this grinding paper was very, very important. The grinding and regrinding. And then after that, we have Mr. Roberto Mattioli once again, José Ronaldo, and finally we went to the PhD courses. Then we had Mr. Rogério, once again studying the separation of barite, but these results, they caused a drastic change in the implementation of the preparation of the reagents. They made it possible to have water recirculation in the Arafértil beneficiation plant, okay? And they said, flotation in these conditions is so absurd. This was not going to happen ever. But they came from a column and a pilot column with the different dimensions, and the results were the separation of 66 mechanical cells via 6 flotation columns. This ugly slide was scanned from a paper that was published, okay, in one of the wonderful conferences organized by Professor Patrick Zhang, and you can see all of this circuit. You have rougher, scavenger, and so you have 18 circuits and 66 cells, and so it became 5 circuits and 6 flotation cells. Okay, this was a PhD paper. Okay, and then Miss Rizia Papini, a PhD student, wrote a paper about the characterization and essential studies on apatite and associated minerals. We wanted to make the minerals individualized so that we could study the effects of each one, and the results, they were not so good. For that time, the conclusion of this in these results is that we could produce some things, but we had to blend with the highest quality mineral. And then we had the wonderful Luiz Antônio Barros, who did the technological characterization of the phosphatic ore from the company called Salitre in Patrocínio. I don't know if why this paper hasn't been published yet. And so he received vast support, ample support from the technical experts from the company, and he was able to write the greatest thesis that I have ever advised. It only had 600 pages. And then we had Michele, is the lady who has dengue fever now, and she studied once again the eternal problem of the carbonated silica, okay? And the depressor, she was able to achieve some interesting results. And then we had Mr. Denilson Costa, and he's going to share his story with you guys later on. He was the first one to use vegetable oils from the Amazon, and his papers from 2012. He is a pioneer. And then this generated other theses, other publications. My dear Lenice Maria is here as well, and she studied the use of sorghum starch, and she's going to share that with us by herself, what she has done. And more recently, we had Mr. Leandro Santos, that in these essential studies, he also used Amazon collectors, okay? He is a professor at Cefet in the city of Araxá. And to wrap up, we had another lady who was a student of ours from the University of Madará, the Federal University of Marabá, southeast, was another research line that we created there. And we had a partnership with chemical experts to develop reagents. Okay, excellent. And my conclusion. My conclusion is the following. The interaction between companies and universities involving graduate students at the master's and doctorate levels is feasible, and it's going to bring about benefits for all of the stakeholders involved. Some people don't believe in this, and I believe I have been able to help a little to make people believe in this. And I would like to thank everything that comes from the PPGEM, our graduate program. We have to thank CAPES and the CNPq, FAPEMIG. They always support graduate studies, and I would really like to thank my students, my master students, my doctorate students. Some of them are here. They are the meaning of my professional life and the heart of my professional life. I would also like to thank the technicians, without whom these papers would not have been done, and the work wouldn't have been done. And they are being represented here by Reinaldo from Arafértil, Sebastião Eduardo Fosfértil, and it could also be Luciano, and Miss Hilda from UFMG. When we're talking about graduate programs, we always remember those who work at the labs, the students, the advisors, and also the admin staff. Without the admin staff, we wouldn't have graduate programs. Our secretary, Cida, represents these admin staff. And Professor André, Lenice, their team, for this wonderful conference, the CBFOS, and it has been proven that it's going to continue. And unfortunately, with a broken heart, my last part here is I would like to thank Mr. Paulo Brandão in memoriam, and he was my professional partner for 60 years. May you rest in peace, my friend. Thank you, Mr. Toninho, for your presentation. We had to mention Mr. Paulo Brandão. CBFOS is never ever going to forget those who have impacted us. And so we couldn't see the past. We couldn't see the articles presented before. So we would really like that after the second edition of CBFOS, we should give a prize or an award to the best papers, and we're going to create the Paulo Brandão Award for the best papers when it comes to technological characterization of phosphates. And so in 2026, okay, starting now from the following presentations, the best papers are going to receive the Paulo Brandão Award. I'm sorry, I cannot hear him. But we're not in a hurry to have the Antonio or the Toninho award. Who is the speaker, the gentleman wearing glasses?
I got gifts, but one subscribers. Thanks for the candy basket. Oh God, another jacket. My stocking's filled with acid. Am I dreaming? What just happened?